Hello, welcome to another episode of Field of Screams Podcast. Today we'll be covering Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Now it's been a long time since I've seen this movie and I couldn't really remember much about it, so I was kind of excited to open it back up and, see what I was missing, refresh my memory of the very first time that I've watched this. And the way this movie opens up, it opens up with Laurie going to the hospital, just like in the OG Halloween 2. And I really enjoyed the beginning. The first 20 minutes were great. Michael Myers was just causing rampage through the hospital. Laurie's running around trying to find help. It's raining cats and dogs outside. She can't escape. She gets in that little security guard shack, and Michael Myers is literally busting down the walls. It was great. I wish they would have continued the atmosphere that we witnessed in the first 20 minutes of this film, because man, it was killer. I was like, oh, Rob Zombie's killing it. And then Laurie wakes up and it's kind of like, ah, crap. Of course, in the beginning of the movie, we get a scene where there's two coroners and they're driving Michael Myers' body. And I feel like if you've seen this movie and if you remember this movie at all, you know exactly who I'm talking about. One of the drivers is from Sons of Anarchy. He plays a sheriff. And the sheriff in Sons of Anarchy, it just has a very calm demeanor. But these two guys, they're the typical white trash people in Rob Zombie's films. For whatever reason, Rob Zombie likes to have people that just talk utter trash and disgusting things. And I don't know if that's Rob Zombie's way of trying to highlight the scum of society, or if he thinks this is just funny, or if he wants just his viewers to be uncomfortable, but this dialogue isn't in all of his films. And there's times to where you forget this is a Rob Zombie film until a scene like this pops in, and then you're like, oh, here's a Rob Zombieism. And these two coroners, they're driving, and one of them looks over at the driver, and he's like, hey, that dead chick had nice tits. And the guy's like, oh, come on, man. And the guy's like, oh, I think I wanted to bang that dead chick. And the driver's like, oh, what are you talking about, dude? And he's like, I'm not saying I would do it. I'm just saying I was tempted. And the guy's like, oh, quit talking like that. If the sheriff catches wind of you talking like this, we're both going to be fired. And then the guy's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. And then the driver looks over and he's like, what's the difference between jelly and jam? You can't jelly your dick in her ass. And he starts laughing, and then they hit a cow. Just with that dialogue, I kind of picture all the actors are on set, Rob Zombie's there, and the actors are kind of looking at it. And they're like, hey, what if we just talked about I don't know, what's going on at my character's household? Maybe my daughter's being a little rebellious, and I asked my coworker, what should I do? And then we hit the cow. And Rob Zombie's like, no. You have to talk about you wanting to violate a dead chick. No, it's really important that you say this in the scene. It's really needed. I just don't understand why there's always these scenes in Rob Zombie's movies. And Rob Zombie's a very talented director. He shoots things very well. He has his own style, and his style usually includes this stuff. I don't know why. I talked about it last video, but I just figured I would go on about it again, because as I was watching it and as I was trying to make notes of what I should talk about, of course, when this scene popped up, I was like, oh, here we go. I don't know why I'm surprised that this is happening, but it is indeed happening. Oh, but the weirdness of that scene isn't even over, because after they hit the cow, the driver's dead. That was the driver's last words, telling that little joke about jelly and jam. But the really perverted coroner, he's still alive. Barely, but he is. And this is a scene where we get, Michael breaking out. But the dead coroner, it shows the aftermath of the wreck, and, the camera's, panning over slowly. And then it, zooms in on that coroner's face, and he, spits up blood. And then for some reason, this carries on for, 3 to 4 minutes, but he just keeps going, fuck. And now while he's doing it, blood's, shooting out of his mouth, it's how I react when I eat too spicy of food. Just very gross and it's not comfortable at all. But I mean, like, these are the characters, and I guess Rob Zombie just found it really important for him to just continue dropping the F-bomb while spitting blood everywhere. It is really gross, but it's also, like, kind of funny to me. I was laughing while he was doing it, but I was also kind of like, ugh, like... But yeah, Michael Myers finally comes out and finishes that guy off, so... Yeah, these two coroners, very important parts of this movie. If you couldn't tell, that last statement was sarcastic, but I mean, characters that are important in this movie. And I think why this movie gets such backlash the way it does, you take the cornerstones of the Halloween series, if you are rebooting it. You have Laurie, you have Dr. Loomis, and in this one we have Danielle Harris back playing her friend Anne. Kind of a weird thing that this movie pulls. Now, Annie in the first one, I mean, whether it's the first OG film or if it's the first Rob Zombie film, Annie's kind of the rebellious friend who's trying to push Laurie to go out and do crazy things or party, go out and live a little, go be with a guy, go drink a beer, and usually Laurie's like, oh, I gotta study for my test, if that's the OG one, or if it's Rob Zombie's one, like, she's a little more relaxed, but she's still the more calmer friend. But this movie pulls the old switcheroo. Annie, after being attacked by Michael Myers, she's much more mature, I would say. She's reserved, she wants to care for Laurie. And Laurie, on the other hand, is very unhinged in this movie. Laurie actually goes out and makes a group of friends at, like, some Hot Topic album-selling store. I don't know the title of it or whatever, but I mean, she starts putting dreads in her hair. It's very different from Laurie. And obviously she's, like, dealing with PTSD, and you might be saying, like, oh, there's nothing wrong with goth album stores, or... there's nothing wrong with braiding your hair or put it in cornrows, whatever it's called. There's nothing wrong with that. But she also has, like, Charles Manson posters on her wall. And to me, like, that's very confusing. Like, if you are attacked by a serial killer, would you want to have other serial killers hanging up on your wall and you celebrating them? To me, it's very weird. I know people deal with pain in lots of different ways. But as Laurie's character was just, like, unfolding, I was like, man, like, she's really went off the deep end here. Like, she's having dreams where she's waking up screaming. Like, take Charles Manson down from your wall. Do yourself a favor. Which, I'll be honest, Scout Taylor Compton, she's a very talented actress. She did well with everything that she had in this movie. I mean, for the material that was given to her anyways, I felt like she handled it well enough. But the character Laurie itself in Halloween 2, I did not like at all. I liked Laurie in Rob Zombie's Halloween 1. I think that she did a better job acting than Jamie Lee Curtis did in the OG Halloween 1. That might be controversial, but I don't think Jamie Lee Curtis was that great of an actress when she filmed Halloween 1. I think she just had the right timing to be in the right film, and then she became a better actress, and then you see her better acting skills in later movies. That's just my opinion. But I think Scout Taylor Compton did good right from the get-go in Rob Zombie's Halloween 1. But this one, man oh man, I could not stand Laurie. Now, speaking of characters that I couldn't stand in this movie, well, I don't want to go too far. Dr. Loomis, what in the world? What did Rob Zombie do to him? Is it Malcolm McDowell who played him in the first movie and now this movie? I thought he did an alright job in Rob Zombie's Halloween 1, filling that void and being Dr. Loomis. One of the things that kind of excites me about Rob Zombie's Halloween 1 is he was actually brave enough to try to cast another guy to play Dr. Loomis. I mean, Donald Pleasance will forever be known as Dr. Loomis. But man, we gotta try to move on. Like, he passed away, like, we need to try to find someone else. I think that would be healthy for the franchise. Rob Zombie tried it, and I did not think he did bad at all. Watching the first one, I got, so excited. I was like, oh, I wonder how they're going to keep his evolution going. Is he going to get more crazier like Donald Pleasance does? But instead, they turn him into, this giant, greedy D-bag. And it's, comedic relief. throughout this movie, honestly. He's going to like these book signings, and while he's there, he has like his little assistant, and she's like, hey, you need to go out there now and start talking about your book. And he's like, I'm not going out there until I get my peach tea. And it's like, what? Like, okay, Loomis is a little different here. And then she's like continuing telling him like things he needs to do that he's not doing. And he's like, woman, if I wanted to hear from you, I would beat it out of you. And it's like, okay, now he's abusive. Come on, Rob Zombie. When she finally does get him to go out to his little book advertisement thing that he's at, like lots of people are there, the press is there, and he's there to talk about his new book that he's trying to make lots of money for so that he can keep buying his peach tea or whatever he likes to drink. He walks out, and the press is like, oh, there's Dr. Loomis, okay. And he walks up to the stand, and Dr. Loomis does not, say any words at all. He just looks up and goes, okay, any questions? You can't open up with that. I feel like if you're someone and you just want people to ask questions so that you can answer them, you can be like, hey, so I'm Dr. Loomis, I got this book here, and this is what I'm going to sell. No, he, doesn't even do that. He's just, walks out, looks around, and goes, any questions? But, of course, there are the questions they ask him. Is Michael Myers still around? And he does the whole spiel of, Michael, let me put it crystal clear. Michael Myers is D-E-A dead. He's spelling it out like it's Sesame Street. Again, it's comedic relief. It's oddly enough. It's so bad, it's kind of funny. But it's sad at the same time because it's my precious Dr. Loomis. What have you done to him? You've turned him into this monster of a man. Oh, man. I guess while I'm on a roll, I'll jump to the third thing that really stood out to me that wasn't that great. So, Michael Myers, we had that beginning. It was awesome. And then we finally get Michael Myers, out in the wilderness, kind of hobo Myers. That's what a lot of people call him. He has a gigantic beard. He looks dirty. His mask is barely hanging on his face. I personally believe that, Rob Zombie took the Michael Myers mask, accidentally dropped it into a blender, tore it up by accident, and then he was like, oh no, it's an artistic decision. He's going to put it on his face, and it's barely going to hang off of him. But yeah, so it's Michael Myers, the hobo, walking around. And while he's walking around, he's having these little dreams or visions, and he's seeing his mom. And seeing... He's seeing all kinds of weird stuff, and he's even seeing little kid Michael Myers, which is really weird. If I had a vision or a flashback or a hallucination, and I saw a dead relative, I would think it would be really weird if I also saw myself, the younger version of myself. I guess the answer to some of this, Laurie does dream a lot of these visions now that I think back to it. So I guess that would answer that. But yeah, we get Rob Zombie's wife. She's in a healthy chunk of this movie just because of these visions. And then we get little kid Michael Myers, which isn't the same actor as in the first movie. I heard that the kid actor from the first movie, he grew 20 feet tall since then, so they couldn't really put him back in the movie. But congratulations to that kid for having a growth spurt. But yeah, he's having these visions. He's seeing his mom, and she's like, Michael, we need to get Boo and kill her and reignite her with the family. And she's walking with a white horse, which they had a little message with the white horse in the beginning of the film. I'm not a fan of that, at all. I really don't see the point. And as I was rewatching it, I recalled there was a certain part of this film that irked me. That was the one memory I had of this film. I remember there was just a part of it that made me feel uncomfortable. And I was trying to remember what it was, and it had something to do with the visions. And I was kind of okay, does this film have freaky visions? What is it? And the very first flashback of Michael Myers' mom, it's Sherry Moon and the white horse, and I saw little Michael, and I kind of started laughing. I'm like, oh man, I hope that isn't what irked me when I first watched it. I would feel like a total chicken. But you know, I keep watching it. But it actually does get to this one part to where Michael Myers, he's walking, he sees his mom and like a horse and I think a little kid self version of him. And they see Laurie on this table, and there's like these like little creatures with like pumpkins for heads. It's very odd. It's like a twisted Halloween demonic vision. But he walks up to Laurie, and the mom's like, "Oh, we gotta bring her back to the family." And I think Laurie like wakes up. It's a really weird sequence of events. But then you see Danielle Harris like strapped to this rocking chair. And she's strapped up just like how the stepdad in Halloween 1 was. And Laurie walks up and like cuts her throat. And then like as she cuts her throat, like they start doing these close-ups of Laurie screaming at the top of her lungs. And she starts like shaking her head really quick, and they like speed it up so it looks all weird. And then like Danielle Harris's face is like flying up at the screen. And during like all of these like flashing images and all that, like Laurie's literally just screaming like, "I'm gonna fucking kill you!" And like it is such a loud scene. And it was like at this point of the movie where I was like, okay, like I was really interested in what was going on. I could buy into a lot of it. I was okay with that, like this stuff being a dream. But Laurie is annoying me with all the screaming that she is doing. Like I swear, I heard Taylor Scout Compton scream at the top of her lungs for like 10 minutes straight. It just felt like it. That poor actress, like her voice had to be sore after doing this movie. So much screaming going on. But yeah, that was the scene that irked me the very first time I watched it. And I could see why, because it's just like uncomfortable and it's not fun to watch. And I'm sure that was Rob Zombie's point. He's like, oh, this scene's going to be like so disturbing to people. Like she's screaming like, "I'm going to effing kill you" over and over and over again. And then like her face is like up in the camera and like we're going to speed it up and it's going to look all crazy like Saw. Like, and like the scene sucks. It sucks to watch. But I guess it is pretty freaky, so whatever. Once it got to the part with all the visions and stuff, like my interest was kind of dwindling by that point. And the movie doesn't do itself any favors. Laurie goes out with her hipster friends to this hipster concert. And not a whole lot happens. One of her emo friends gets killed, but they don't even like really look for her. They end up leaving the concert, her and her other friend. But while they're there, I mean, the parts that are shown of her being at that concert or festival, whatever you want to call it, Danielle Harris was home alone, and Michael Myers like comes back, and I actually thought Rob Zombie did this scene really well. Danielle Harris is like doing her thing at the house, and Michael Myers comes, and you don't see what he does to her. You hear it. You hear Danielle Harris scream. You hear like the struggle, and you hear her like continue to scream, like she's obviously like in pain. And then like eventually you get down to where Sheriff Brackett comes in. And that's his daughter. You know, he almost lost her the first time in Halloween 1, but this time he actually has lost her. Like, blood's everywhere. It's a devastating scene. Brad Dourif plays Sheriff Brackett in the Rob Zombie films, and I will say he is the best Sheriff Brackett throughout this franchise. And in this scene here alone, like, you feel for him. Whenever he sees his daughter and you just see the lost look in his eyes, like, man, it's a powerful scene. And that's a combination of good acting. It's a combination of Danielle Harris played her character as Annie really well. You know, she was one of the characters in the movie that you didn't want to die. You know, Laurie's kind of getting to this phase to where you're getting sick of her. You're getting sick of Dr. Loomis. You know, what good characters do you have to rely on? So when Annie goes, it's kind of like, well, crap. But yeah, you see Brackett's tragic loss, and I'll be honest, I think this might be the most emotional death scene in the Halloween franchise. I will go there. Yeah, a lot of people die throughout this franchise, but do they really ever take a moment like they do for Annie in this scene? Like, it was a very good scene. So, I know I'm highlighting a lot of bad in this movie. I'm making fun of a lot of characters. But I gotta give due diligence to this scene. When I watched it, I was like, okay, this is kind of making up for some of the bad things. Does it make up for it completely? Not really. But, great scene. Very great scene. And as the movie went, there was also just other shots that were just shot very well. When Laurie's running at night and you get the kind of just picture of the moon up in the sky as she's running. There were some great shots in this film. The very end of it, I thought it was just very anticlimactic. You get to the end, Laurie's in the little shack, Loomis is there, trying to redeem himself. You got little Michael holding Laurie down, and you got Sherry Moon there too, saying reconnect the family. It was all very weird, and as you're just watching this all unfold, and Loomis is in there going, what in the world? What's Laurie doing? And you see little Michael holding her down like he's a Chucky doll. You're like, how did we get here? What happened? The first one was so good. What was Rob Zombie thinking? But by the end of it all, it felt very anticlimactic to me. She walks out wearing his mask. Ooh. And I know the point of the film is to show the decline of Laurie. It's a very bold message to take in a Halloween film. Rob Zombie swung for a fence here. Did he succeed? I don't know. Maybe for some people. But I think this movie is generally disliked. And I could definitely see why. If you're watching the director's cut, to add insult to injury, at the very end, when Dr. Loomis is with Michael Myers, and he's say something, and Michael Myers takes off his mask, where it falls off because it's hanging by a thread, and it looks like Hagrid from Harry Potter went on a drunken bender and got super dirty, and he's just staring at Dr. Loomis, and he's die! And it just felt very out of character for Michael Myers. Michael Myers don't talk. And if you're going to have him talk, let's do a little better. It's hard to think of the perfect thing to have Michael Myers say. But I don't think him yelling die at Dr. Loomis is, the iconic thing that we need. If you're going to have him talk, it just better have some significance. And that would be very hard to do, so I just wouldn't even try to do it. So to kind of summarize up my thoughts over this whole movie, and I've kind of touched upon it some, man oh man, Rob Zombie definitely went for the fence as far as being different. In the first Halloween movie, we get some Rob Zombie craziness of providing a backstory for Michael Myers, and then we get the actual plot line of Halloween 1. In this movie, we get 20 minutes of the plot line of Halloween 2, followed by the absolute madness of Rob Zombie movies to follow. And I think some of it goes too far off course. For the first one, when things start to kind of veer off, it's going to eventually merge back into the plot of Halloween 1. So it kind of kept it on the road, even when things went a little crazy. When Michael's stepdad was talking about his stepsister's dump truck, you knew it was going to correct course eventually, and you were going to get somewhat of a story of the franchise that you love. This movie, not so much. Once it starts to veer, sometimes it veers just way too much. Laurie's being way too crazy. She's worshipping Charles Manson. We really don't need that stuff. Do we really need Laurie screaming for 10 minutes straight? Do we need this many dream sequences? Do we need a white horse? Do we need... there's a lot of things. Do we really need that? Do we, Rob? But he does it, and I give him credit. He didn't just fall in line and make a boring shot-for-shot remake of Halloween 2. In a world where there are a lot of vanilla movies of directors who play it safe, Rob Zombie, he took some swings. He took some dares. Did all of them connect? Not really. Did a lot of them miss? Yeah. But I mean, there's some good stuff there, like Annie's death, Brackett's reaction. There's some good shots. But yeah, it's just at this point to where, we're going to talk about David Gordon Green's Halloween next. And they had to do that. I kind of poke fun at the Halloween franchise for so many different versions of it, so many different storylines, but I mean, Rob Zombie burnt this bridge with this movie. You took Loomis to a point to where you couldn't return, you took Laurie to a point you really can't return, you killed Annie. There was really nowhere else to go, so they had to completely start it over. And that's what we're going to be talking about next week, so... This was my review of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. There's quite a bit to talk about. I'm sure I've missed a lot of stuff, but if I missed something, comment it down below. And I always like hearing people's thoughts. Even if you didn't like my review, tell me what you liked about this movie. Tell me if you do like my review. It would help my self-confidence. Again, thank you for listening, especially if you made it this far. Feel free to like this video. It helps it get out to other people. And if you want to keep hearing these reviews, subscribe so that you know when the next one comes out. Again, thanks for listening, guys, and until next time.